The young girl had always loved music. From the moment she first held a trumpet, she felt a connection she couldn't explain. It wasn't about fame or applause for her. It was about the way music made her feel alive. Every day she would sit by the window in her small room, practicing for hours, letting her breath and fingers dance along with every note. Her neighbors often paused to listen, smiling quietly, though most of them didn't understand the depth of her passion. This year, a big music festival was being held in the city. Musicians from all over the country were coming, including some of the most famous names in the industry. For her, it was both exciting and terrifying. She had never performed in front of such a large audience before. She didn't even have the money for fancy instruments or lessons from famous teachers, but what she lacked in resources, she made up for in sheer determination and love for her music. On the first day of the festival, she walked nervously into the rehearsal hall. The room was buzzing with energy. Everywhere she looked, there were people with shining instruments, polished uniforms, and confident smiles. And then she saw him. The famous trumpet player she had admired from a distance for years. His reputation preceded him. He had won countless awards and was known for his flawless performances. The girl felt a flutter of excitement and fear. Maybe, just maybe, he might notice her, but as she quietly started practicing a soft melody in the corner, she felt a sharp, mocking laugh. She looked up to see the famous musician smirking, clearly amused by her playing. "Is she even ready for this?" he whispered to someone beside him, his voice dripping with superiority. The girl's heart sank. For a moment she froze, unsure if she should stop or keep going. The laughter stung, but deep down, it ignited something else, a determination not to let anyone's words define her. She continued playing, ignoring the whispers and the smirks around her. She played not to impress anyone, but to prove to herself that she could. The notes flowed, imperfect yet honest, full of the hours she had spent practicing alone in her tiny room. Some festival attendees started to watch quietly, drawn by the raw emotion in her music. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. After a while, the famous musician shook his head in amusement, clearly thinking her efforts were laughable. "She won't last 5 minutes out there," he said loudly, clearly intending for everyone to hear. The girl felt a pang of embarrassment, but she didn't run away. She clenched her jaw and kept practicing, letting her music speak louder than his words ever could. Later, when the rehearsal ended, the girl packed up her trumpet slowly. Other musicians were chatting and laughing, excited for the upcoming performances. She felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation. She knew the famous musician had dismissed her, but deep inside she believed she had something special. The festival was not just a place to compete. It was a chance to show herself what she was truly capable of. As she stepped outside into the cool evening air, she took a deep breath. She remembered why she loved music in the first place, not for fame, not for recognition, but for the feeling it gave her, the way it allowed her to express herself when words were not enough. She decided then that no matter what happened at the festival, she would play her heart out. Little did she know that the laughter she had just endured was only the beginning. Soon, that same famous musician would be forced to confront a truth he had never expected: that talent, passion, and courage could come from the most unlikely places. The next morning, the girl woke up early, her mind buzzing with nervous energy. She could still hear the laughter from yesterday echoing in her ears. The famous musician's mocking smile had been seared into her memory. She tried to shake it off, telling herself that she was here for herself, not for him. But deep down, she couldn't ignore the sting. She had worked so hard, and here was someone admired by so many dismissing her without even really knowing her. She spent the morning practicing in a quiet corner of her small apartment, running through her favorite pieces over and over again. She focused on the rhythm, the tone, and the emotions behind every note. Sometimes her hands shook with frustration when a tricky section wouldn't come out right, but she reminded herself to breathe and start again. Each mistake was just a step closer to something better. She thought about all the evenings she had spent alone, holding her trumpet and imagining a crowd listening to her music. This festival was her chance to make that dream feel real. Meanwhile, News of her presence and the incident with the famous musician had spread quietly among the festival staff. Some people were curious about the girl who had kept practicing despite being laughed at. A few musicians even whispered among themselves, quietly admiring her courage. It was unusual for someone so young and inexperienced to stand their ground in the face of public ridicule. Later that day, the festival organizers announced a surprise challenge, a friendly musical duel. The challenge was meant to entertain the audience and give musicians a chance to showcase their skills in an unusual way. The girl felt her heart jump when she heard this. She knew immediately what it could mean. If she participated, she could show not only the audience, but also the famous musician that she had talent. But a part of her was terrified. Standing on the stage, facing him directly, would be more intimidating than anything she had ever done. Still, she agreed. She didn't want to back down. The moment she said yes, the whispers in the room grew louder. Everyone knew who the famous musician was, and now this young girl from a modest background was about to face him in front of a live audience. She could feel the weight of expectation and doubt pressing down on her, but she also felt a strange thrill. When the time for the duel arrived, the hall was packed. People had filled every seat, buzzing with excitement and curiosity. The girl took a deep breath as she walked onto the stage, her trumpet clutched tightly in her hands. She glanced at the famous musician. He was already there, standing tall with his trumpet gleaming under the lights, a confident smirk on his face. He looked down at her, shaking his head slightly. Clearly thinking this was going to be an easy win, the audience quieted as the first notes rang out. The famous musician began, playing a technically flawless piece. His fingers moved like lightning on the valves, hitting every note perfectly. The crowd clapped and cheered as he finished, clearly impressed by his own skill. The girl felt her stomach twist with nerves, but she reminded herself that music was more than just technical skill. It was about feeling. It was about telling a story. She raised her trumpet and closed her eyes for a moment, imagining every note as a word in that story. Then she began to play. At first, the melody was soft and gentle, almost shy, but as she continued, it grew stronger and more confident. Her fingers moved smoothly, her breath steady. She poured all her emotions into the music, the frustration of being laughed at, the hours of practice in a small room, the dreams she held in her heart. Each note carried a piece of her. The audience was captivated. They could feel the honesty in her music, the raw emotion that no technical skill alone could convey. Some of the more skeptical listeners leaned forward, listening intently. Even the famous musician's smirk faltered slightly as he realized this was not just a beginner playing timidly. This was someone who knew music in her bones. Someone who played not for applause but for truth. As she continued, she began to take more risks, adding small flourishes and improvisations that showcased her unique style. She played with a freedom that came only from true passion. The notes danced through the air, wrapping around the audience and touching their hearts. People whispered to each other, amazed that someone so young could command the stage with such presence. When she finished, there was a brief moment of stunned silence. Then the hall erupted in applause. People cheered and clapped, some even standing up. The girl lowered her trumpet, feeling her heart pound. She had done it. She had shown not only the audience but also the famous musician that she was more than capable. The famous musician stared at her, his expression a mixture of surprise and admiration. He had never expected someone so young, someone he had dismissed so easily, to play with such emotion and skill. For the first time, he realized that talent was not about fame or reputation. It could come from anywhere, from anyone willing to work hard and believe in themselves. After the duel, the girl stepped off the stage, her hands still trembling slightly. She felt a wave of relief and joy. People came up to her, offering congratulations and words of encouragement. Some asked for her autograph, while others simply wanted to tell her how moved they were by her performance. It was overwhelming, but in the best way possible. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about the events of the day. She realized that facing fear and standing up to doubt had been just as important as the music itself. She had proven to herself that she could rise above mockery and shine. And she knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. She also thought about the famous musician. She felt a small sense of satisfaction knowing that he had witnessed her talent firsthand. But she didn't want revenge or to humiliate him. She wanted respect, and most importantly, she wanted to continue growing and sharing her music with the world. The next morning, she woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. The festival was far from over, and there were more performances, more opportunities to learn, and more moments to inspire others. She picked up her trumpet and started practicing again, this time with a quiet confidence. She knew that talent alone wasn't enough. It was courage, persistence, and heart that made someone truly great. Little did she know that the lessons she had learned from this duel, the importance of believing in herself, the power of passion, and the unexpected ways talent could shine would carry her through challenges far greater than this festival. And somewhere in the crowd, the famous musician too was thinking about her, reconsidering what he had believed about music, skill, and the people who wielded it. The moment felt electric. The hall was packed, and the audience's eyes were glued to the stage. The girl felt her heartbeat in her chest, each beat like a drum echoing in her ears. She adjusted her trumpet, took a deep breath, and reminded herself that she had faced this fear before. She had already survived the laughter, the doubt, and the sneers. Now it was time to play not to impress, but to express herself fully. The famous musician, confident as ever, began his first piece. His fingers moved quickly, hitting every note perfectly. It was technically flawless, a dazzling display of skill that made the crowd gasp. Some audience members clapped in admiration. He looked at her from across the stage, clearly expecting her to be intimidated. His smirk suggested he thought the duel would be over in a few moments, but she didn't falter. She closed her eyes and imagined the room as a blank canvas. Every note she played would paint a picture, tell a story. She started with a soft, gentle melody. At first, it was cautious, almost tentative, but then the music began to flow naturally, growing richer and more expressive with every note. Her fingers danced across the trumpet valves, her breath steady, her soul fully engaged in the music. As she played, the audience began to lean forward, listening intently. They could feel her emotions in each note, the determination, the struggle, the quiet joy she felt when playing. It wasn't about perfection. It was about honesty. And honesty, as she knew, had a power that skill alone could never match. The famous musician's smirk began to fade. He had never expected someone so young and unassuming to play with such confidence and emotion. He tried to continue his performance, adding faster runs and high notes, hoping to regain the crowd's attention. But his music, though flawless, began to feel mechanical compared to the girl's heartfelt performance. The audience's applause shifted slowly from admiration of his skill to amazement at her talent. She moved into the more challenging section of her piece, a sequence that required both precision and feeling. Her fingers flew over the trumpet valves, but it wasn't just about technique. She added small flourishes, little improvisations that made the music her own. It wasn't flashy in the way the famous musician's performance had been. It was full of life and emotion, and the audience could feel it. Some people even had tears in their eyes, moved by the sincerity of her playing. The duel became more than a contest of skill. It became a story told through music. Each note was a sentence, each phrase a paragraph. The hall was silent except for the sound of her trumpet, and everyone could sense the struggle behind the music. This wasn't just about winning a duel. This was about proving something far bigger, that passion, courage, and heart could compete with fame and reputation. As she reached the climax of her piece, the girl took a deep, steadying breath. She played a high, clear note that hung in the air like a shining star, holding it just long enough to make the audience lean in. The notes that followed were swift and bright, full of energy and emotion. Every corner of the hall felt the power of her music. The audience erupted in applause again, louder this time, their cheers carrying all the way to the back of the room. The famous musician, for the first time, looked truly surprised. He stopped mid-piece and stared at her, his eyes wide. The smirk was gone. He realized that this young girl, who had seemed so inexperienced and timid just days ago, had completely captured the crowd with her talent. For a moment, he felt something he hadn't expected, humility. The girl's performance ended, and she lowered her trumpet, her chest heaving with excitement and relief. The audience leapt to their feet, clapping and cheering, some shouting words of encouragement and admiration. People were crying, smiling, laughing. They had witnessed something extraordinary, something that went beyond mere technical skill. They had witnessed courage, determination, and heart. She looked at the famous musician, who finally walked toward her with a slow, deliberate pace. The hall quieted, everyone watching. He extended a hand and said sincerely, "That was incredible. I misjudged you. You have a gift that goes far beyond what I expected." The girl felt a rush of emotions, relief, pride, and gratitude. She didn't feel the need for revenge or to boast. She had proven something to herself and to the audience, and that was enough. After the duel, festival organizers approached her, inviting her to perform at more events, both locally and nationally. Other musicians came to her, offering friendship, collaboration, and mentorship. For the first time, she felt that her music could open doors she had only dreamed of. And the best part was that she had done it by being herself, by staying true to her passion and refusing to let doubt or ridicule control her. That evening, as she walked through the quiet streets after the festival, she replayed every moment in her mind. She thought about the hours she had spent practicing alone, the nights of frustration, the moments of doubt, and how she had faced all of them. Each note she had played was a testament to her journey, and now it had touched the hearts of hundreds of people. She also thought about the famous musician. She didn't resent him anymore. In fact, she felt a strange sense of respect. His laughter and dismissal had pushed her to rise above her fears, to dig deeper, and to show the world what she was capable of. Sometimes she realized even negative experiences could become powerful motivators. The duel had changed her in ways she hadn't anticipated. She had always loved music, but now she understood that talent alone wasn't enough. Courage, persistence, and authenticity mattered just as much. She had faced ridicule, nerves, and a famous musician's scorn and had come out stronger, more confident and more determined to follow her dream. That night, she sat by her window with her trumpet in her lap, playing softly. This time it wasn't for anyone else. It was just for her, a celebration of everything she had achieved so far, and a quiet promise to herself that she would continue to grow, to learn, and to share her music with the world. And somewhere in the quiet of the city, the famous musician thought about her performance again and again, realizing that sometimes greatness could come from the most unexpected places, and that humility was a lesson even the most skilled had to learn. The days after the duel were like a dream for the young girl. She woke up each morning to messages from people she had never met, praising her performance and asking her to play at events, concerts, and music schools. Her phone buzzed constantly with invitations, each one a reminder that the world was noticing her talent. She could hardly believe it. Just a few days ago, she had been laughed at, doubted, and dismissed. Now she was being celebrated. The festival organizers invited her to perform in the closing concert, a highlight of the entire event. The girl was thrilled, but also a little nervous. Performing in front of thousands of people, including some of the most respected musicians in the country, was a huge responsibility. She spent hours preparing, practicing her pieces carefully while also allowing herself moments to breathe, to enjoy the music without pressure. She remembered the lesson from the duel. Music wasn't just about skill. It was about heart. When the day of the closing concert arrived, the hall was packed, even fuller than during the duel. People whispered excitedly, eager to see the young girl who had astonished everyone. She stepped onto the stage, trumpet in hand, and felt a calm confidence settle over her. She wasn't just playing to prove herself anymore. She was playing to share something beautiful with the audience. Her performance began softly, almost tentatively, but as she continued, the music grew stronger, bolder, and more expressive. Every note carried her emotions, the joy of achieving her dream, the relief of overcoming fear, and the excitement of the new journey ahead. The audience listened in awe, completely captivated by the authenticity of her performance. She added subtle improvisations, small flourishes that made the music uniquely hers. It was as if she was speaking directly to everyone's hearts without saying a word. The famous musician watched from the side of the stage. He had spent the days following the duel reflecting on her performance and his own attitude. He realized that his initial judgment had been wrong and that talent and courage often came from unexpected places. Now, watching her play with such sincerity and mastery, he felt a deep respect for her. He understood that music was not about proving superiority, but about touching hearts and inspiring others. After her performance ended, the applause was thunderous. People leapt to their feet, cheering and clapping. Some wiped tears from their eyes, moved by the emotion she had conveyed. She smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. This was more than just recognition. It was a connection with the audience, a shared experience that went beyond words. In the days that followed, her life began to change. She received invitations to perform in concerts across the country, opportunities she had only dreamed of. Music teachers offered to mentor her, musicians asked her to collaborate, and fans wrote to tell her how much her performance had inspired them. She worked hard, but she never let the praise go to her head. She remembered the laughter, the doubt, and the lessons she had learned along the way. Humility and dedication became her guiding principles. The famous musician approached her privately one afternoon. He offered her guidance and advice, sharing his experiences and helping her navigate the world of professional music. He admitted that he had underestimated her and expressed admiration for her courage and talent. The girl felt grateful, not just for his support, but for the journey that had brought her to this moment, the challenges, the ridicule, and the triumphs that had shaped her into the musician she was becoming. Her story began to inspire others. Young musicians from small towns who had felt overlooked or dismissed reached out to her, sharing their dreams and fears. She encouraged them, showing them that talent and determination could overcome obstacles, that courage in the face of doubt could lead to extraordinary opportunities. She realized that her journey was not just about her own success, it was about helping others find their own voice. Just as she had found hers, years later she looked back on that festival as a turning point in her life. The girl who had been laughed at, the one who had felt nervous and small, had grown into a confident, respected musician. She had performed in grand concert halls, collaborated with incredible artists, and inspired countless young musicians. But she never forgot the lessons she had learned that day. That passion and heart were more important than fame. That courage could overcome ridicule, and that true greatness came from authenticity and perseverance. Even the famous musician, who had once laughed at her, often spoke of her as one of the most memorable performers he had ever seen. He had learned a valuable lesson from her, that talent should never be underestimated, and that humility was essential, no matter how skilled or famous one might be. The duel, which had begun as a moment of tension and doubt, had become a lasting story of respect, growth, and inspiration. The girl continued to play, not for awards or recognition, but for the love of music and the joy of sharing it with others. She never forgot the fear and doubt she had felt, and she used those memories to stay grounded, compassionate, and determined. Every performance was a reminder of how far she had come, and of the power of courage, persistence, and heart. Her story spread far and wide, becoming an example for anyone who had ever been underestimated or laughed at. It showed that talent could come from anywhere, and that confidence, determination, and sincerity could turn even the harshest criticism into an opportunity to shine. She had not only changed her own life, but had also touched the lives of countless others, proving that the power of music and the human spirit could overcome any obstacle. In the end, the girl realized that the true victory was not the applause, the recognition, or even the duel itself. The real triumph was believing in herself, facing her fears, and using her music to connect with others. That was a victory no one could take away, a story she would carry in her heart forever, inspiring her to continue reaching for the impossible, one note at a time.